Nighttime on Still Waters. This is NB 506812, narrowcasting into the night from somewhere on Britain's waterways. The 11th of May, Monday. Mother and a host of tiny ducklings. Don't count them, just enjoy. A raven alights on the one oak and barks at the morning sky. A thrush peels off notes in triplicate, expansive, avant-garde. I listen with the untutored ears of a schoolboy taken to the Proms. Washes of rain sweep along towpath and water, spring soft and gentle. Dark waters from the sky joining the dark waters of the earth. It's the night of the new moon, the lunar triduum, 3 nights of darkness, holy in its own unaccountable and wilder way. This is the narrowboat Erica, narrowcasting into the darkness of a damp, moonless May night, to you, wherever you are. Greetings, it's so good to see you. How are you? I was hoping that you'd make it tonight. The dampness is making the night feel a little bit chilly, so the stove is on and the cabin is warm and cozy, and the kettle is singing on the hob and the biscuit barrel is full. So come inside and welcome aboard. These are the glorious days of sunshine and wind and showers, when clouds climb high and thunder rumbles, when the weather can spin on a sixpence, starting out sharp with frost, and then melt syrupy with sunshine, and then blacken into hail, all in one morning. Colours burst, purple vetch and tiny jewel dust of cranespill. And a few yards along the bank, it's blooming with blazing poker-like pillars of samphine, healthy hay. It looks too exotic to be just scattered among the chickweed, the poppy, and the rangy oxeye daisies and hawksbeard. Once it was common, a much-needed staple, its medicinal qualities vital for keeping livestock healthy. But science, combined with economic shifts and agricultural practice, led it to becoming quite rare. However, it's good to see that it at last is beginning to make a comeback. And these are the glorious days when the canal can turn in no more than an instant from mirror calm, where the surface reflects its world with vibrant glass-like solidity, to the furrowed chop of racing wavelets that shiver from bank to bank as the rushes bend low. And the slow rhythm of the canal has begun to gradually gather apace. Boats pass a little more frequently, holiday hire and private, and snatched conversations on the towpath. After last year, the rain's a bit of a relief, says one as we pass on our morning walk. Well, I had noticed that the levels have dropped an inch or two, I remark. Well, the other night, he continues, a boat went through late. The next day I met one of the CRT guys, who told me that the gates of the flight 5 or 6 miles down from us had been left open. Ah, that might account for the drop, I say. And our dogs amiably sniff the hedgerow for news. Thank you as always for taking the time and the trouble to contact me. It's always great to hear from you. And I had a lovely message from Brad Paris via the contact form on our website, noswpod.com. Thank you, Brad. And I'm so pleased that you've been enjoying the podcast. And I also had a lovely email, also via that contact form, from long-time listener and Lockwheeler Linda, perhaps better known to us as Orange Cookie. Linda, I am so pleased to hear that the long dark tunnel seems to be coming to an end. And a very warm welcome to these shores. And Wales? Oh, Wales. Now, I have this feeling from knowing a little of your and Mike's work that you would love Wales. So do listen to its call and give it a visit. It's a place, I think, where your soul will be able to stretch. And I also loved your story about MJ, who I think was one of my very first listeners, certainly to contact me. Linda wrote, and yesterday I just discovered that an Instagram friend who lives within an hour of us is one of your fans. I would often hear MJ and Rory, and oh wait, here are those same two names in his posts. So I messaged MJ and he told me of his connection to you. That's brilliant. I really love that. And also, hello to MJ and Rory. And talking of Instagram, hello and greetings to Sandra Hales and also to Chris Knight. It's lovely to have you with us. And over on Facebook, it was great to hear from Tracy Brisbane. Tracy, I'm so glad that you enjoyed the Even Song of the Wild episode. And thanks also so much for that book recommendation. And thank you also to Jason and Karen for your kind comments on that episode as well. And I'm really pleased to see that your first few weeks living aboard even, are going really well. And over on Mastodon, hello to old friend of the podcast, Mind Shambles. I really love your vegetable patch and how you're managing to grow such a range of plants on it. Donna will be most envious. I'm not sure if the recent rain has reached you over there in the east. I hope so, and I hope your water butts are getting replenished. I will always remember that wonderful feeling when, after a prolonged dry period, a heavy shower of rain filled our water butts to overflowing again. It's such a rich feeling. And over on YouTube, greetings over in Australia to Tania Yorgey. Thank you, Tania, so much for your comment. And it's really interesting what you say about that interplay between logos and mythos in the sense of mind and imagination. As you know, it's something that's quite close to my heart and it's something that I enjoy exploring too. And while we're on YouTube, a merry chin chin and cheers to John McMahon. Thank you to everyone who supports this podcast in so many, many different ways. I really do appreciate it. And thank you particularly to all of our Lockwheelers for supporting this podcast. They are Anna McKellar, Susan Baker, Mind Shambles, Clare Hollingsworth, Kevin B., Fleur and David Mcloughlin, Lois Raphael, Tania Yorgey, Andrea Hansen, Chris Hinds, Chris and Alan on the narrowboat The Land of Green Ginger, Captain Arlo, Rebecca Russell, Alison on the narrowboat Mucker, Derek and Pauline on Silver Fox, Anna V, Orange Cookie, Mary Keane, Tony Rutherford, Arabella Holtzapfel, Rory with MJ and Kayla, Narrowboat Precious Chat, Linda Reynolds Birkins, Richard Noble, Carol Ferguson, Tracy Thomas, Mark and Tricia Stowe, and Madeline Smith. Thank you. My past is sewn together with a patchwork of jobs. Rather chaotic jumble, perhaps. It certainly couldn't be called a career path. Not in the conventional sense, at least. It's untidy and spring-heeled, and it leaps and jumps and turns on a halfpenny bit, quixotic and haphazard. Wrong turns? Yeah, but I don't really regret much of it. But looking back, of all the jobs that I have been involved with, the one I loved the best, although there are some close contenders, but the one that I derived the most pleasure and satisfaction from, and the one that touched the very deepest part of me, and in which I felt the most comfortable, and the only one in which I felt the truest to me, was the 3 years that I was the village clockwinder. It was unpaid, unrecognised, known by just a few, and appreciated by even fewer. And it required climbing the church tower twice a week, 3 if I'd miscalculated, and wind up 3 heavy weights that had slowly, incrementally inched their way down to the cluttered, mousy twilight of the floor at the base of the tower. Check the mechanism, the going as it was called. Edged the 4 big minute hands that swept the 4 clock faces on each side of the tower. Just forward a nudge, if the clock was working a little slow. Always forward, never back. If time was speeding over the rooftops too quickly, stop the pendulum for the required length, and then ease it back into its unhurried swing. The whole thing took about half an hour, all told. Often less than that. But in all honesty, I eked it out as long as I could. There were the 3 weights to be wound. One was associated with the tolling of the bell, the strike. One was for the clock mechanism itself, the going, and one for the chimes that rang out on a barrel carillon every quarter of an hour. You needed to calculate the winding to occur between each quarter chime. And sometimes I would miscalculate. The warning ratchet would jump, 1 minute to stop the turning, disengage the winder, think of it as a windlass, place it somewhere safe, and wait. I used to love that, standing, listening for those bells to ring out. Towards the end, I could time it almost to perfection. The last wind just before the trip. Breathless, always breathless, I'd sit on the stone steps beside the trapdoor in the tower wall and listen to the bells rock and peal a couple of feet above my head. It was to check that the strike and the chime mechanisms had not got out of sequence, I would tell myself. God forbid that the village bell should ring out 9 or 11 at 10 o'clock. And it was, sort of. But I really could have done that just as easily by listening out for them at home. No. The truth that I didn't even tell myself at the time was something far deeper, far more spiritual. And so it was no hardship. Even in winter it was fine. At the time we lived literally just around the corner from the church. And even better, although it made the walk slightly longer, I could walk to the church without even touching a road and go entirely by fields and snickets. And in late summer, the meadow grass reached up to my waist and shimmered with butterflies. One winter, the snow came over my Wellingtons and made the climbing of the ladders treacherous. In summer heat, the damp coolness of the tower was heaven. And although I tried to keep the days and times as regular as possible, my favourite times to wind were when they coincided with sunrise and sunset. Watching dawn stretch over Sunrising Hill in the east, through the little squares of the dull Victorian glass. And then there was the time when I was halfway through winding, when I was suddenly plunged into darkness, and I heard the heavy oak church door 3 floors below me slam shut, and the clunk of a key being turned in the lock. And then there was the day when a new notice pinned to the notice board in the entrance porch caught my eye, flapping gently in the wind. And I read there the announcement that after the required consultation period, it had been agreed that the church clock was going to be automated and be fitted with an electric winder. I read it 3 or 4 times, struggling to make sense of the words that swam before me. It came completely out of the blue. I heard later that the main argument that was being put forward was that there was no longer anyone in the village prepared to take on the clock-winding duties. On the great wooden cabinet that housed the clock, and some of the support beams around it, the village clock-winders through the ages had carved their names or initials. Later, from the close of the 1800s, they wrote their names on the right-hand panel. A list of names that had grown familiar to me as I read them as I wound, just as those a little higher in that list must have also done. Names inextricably linked with the winding of time, and giving the village its next allotment of 84 hours, 7 sweeps of the heavy hour hands around the full moons of each clock face. Family names, many still found in the village, living and on the war memorials. Names I had come to know with a strange intimacy. And now this felt like a betrayal to them, to the workings of time, to this particular village. Not so much a betrayal by those involved in making that decision. I had my suspects, or the mendacious way that it was handled. Such is politics, great and small. But somehow a betrayal by me. I'd still not written my name on the cabinet, not yet. Not until I felt that the time was right. And now I knew that my name was going to be the last in that line. The line that traced the history through 2 great wars and the upheavals both national and local. And the time still didn't feel right. But one afternoon, one that I can barely now remember, I took out my pen, and my name joined that list of all those who gave the village time. And under that, wrote the heavy word, Finis. A chance post that recently caught my eye on social media brought all of this to mind again. And I remember that afterwards I recorded a video of that last winding. And I've included the link in the program notes to it. But I'll read the words that went along with it here. Wade, Cainton, 1914. F. Heritage, 1917 to 1918. C. Pilling, February. Every week, twice a week, I would climb these worn stone steps, climbing starward to where the prayers of old ring with bat song and the fire of tested faith. Owl high, the sky's hinterland. The first landing is where the bell ringers meet. It's light and neat here, carpeted and ordered as befits a community that flows to the patterns of numbers and figured diagrams and shouted ring calls. But we need to go higher still, up 2 more sets of ladders that lean lazily against stone, each step grooved and smoothed by the boot treads of 100 years or more. As you climb, they creak and flex like the masts of an anchored schooner. And this too is fitting, for we are climbing haphazard-like to heaven, a place caught between two worlds and therefore elemental and raw, where the wind sometimes booms and when it rains it is beautiful. And you can see Sunrising Hill like a green cresting wave through the dimmed cataract misty eyes of the southward window. And on weekdays the children's voices from the playground below float upwards like the songs of Gull. And you know that in some way you are now no longer grounded upon the earth. 3 or 4 steps before you get to the top of the final ladder, you must reach up and push the trap door so that it drops heavily back against the backstop, and then you have arrived. For most, this is a liminal transitory place. Few come here, fewer stop. But this is the Clockwinder's Landing, criss-crossed with rods and wires and ropes, cluttered with the detritus from below. Butterfly wings jewel the cobwebs. This is where flies winter in their glistening black clusters, and the holy pigeons doze among the prayers of our weathered saints, and dust motes swim the shallow river of daylight. The pulse beat of time fills this place. Everything here is functional, and because of it, it has that special, pure beauty. Made by Smiths of Derby, who still maintain it, in 1877, the flatbed motion cast in iron and alchemy and brass. Time sculpted in its geometric form. Ticks and spins and whirls and chimes, the slow journeys of the sun and moon across Tyso's sky. And upon this oiled loom the village seconds and minutes and even centuries have been woven. 3 trains with 3 weights heavy with time, that each week make their slow incremental descent down the tower, second by second, minute by minute, lowering time from the almost heavens to the village below. 3 trains, the chime, the going, the strike, that must be hauled by hand back up the tower. And it seems right to be paid for our allotment of time with our sinew and sweat. Between the hour and the quarter chime, 14 minutes to wind. At first it was a challenge, and I often needed to stop while the first quarter tripped and rang out, and then continue. But later it became easier. And it was always a joy when I finished. Hanging the winding handle upon its hook, sitting on the steps by the little door that's Mary's Eye, to watch the action whir and listen to the bells play out as the tune barrel slowly turned. 3 winds of the windlass for each complete rotation of the weight pulley. Smoothly, so as not to snatch, taking the weight in stomach and arms. And this way, the buttery whey of time is churned. The soft purr of the ratchets counterpoint to the steady clunk of the going. Always steady, always careful lest the ratchet slipped, sending the weight tumbling to the ground, time literally flying through your hands. Count each turn in sections of 100. Slowly, the weight rises. 30 more and it will be visible from the hatch. Another 40 will see it to the top. First the chime, then the going. This winds the clock. The weight is much smaller and it allows breath to return to the body and strength to the arms. Then finally, the strike. Always breathless at the end. And time ebbs and flows with the seasons. The pendulum contracts with the cold, and so time speeds up. Summer heat, the pendulum lengthens, and time then becomes as slow and as languorous as the dog days of August. Reset village time. Stop the pendulum to capture lost minutes, and if too slow, turn the setting dial to nudge the great hands of the four-faced clock forward. Slowing down, speeding up the uncounted minutes. Regulating Dylan Thomas's God-speeded time. If there are any moments in my life that could be described thus, it was then. These were the hallowed times. A place where the streams of time elided, stood still, slipped back. A confluence of present and past that became the breathed promise of the future. For 142 years, this clock has regulated and sung out with 4 of its 6 bells village time. It has marked the lives and the now forgotten moments of all who have lived here. And for 139 years, men and women have climbed these steps, breathed this musty pigeon-hallowed air to give life to their next weeks and their unknown triumphs and sorrows to come. And for 139 years, each winder gave to the village each quarter hour that tumbled over thatch and tile, rolling down the nestling streets, its buildings the colour of dripping honey, lit by a gathering sun. The tune of each quarter lifting and kicking over the tucked fields ridged by the brute muscle of those who have lived before us. And I am not the only one to have felt this. The side of the clock cabinet bears the marks made by those who had come before me. Pencilled names and dates, fragmentary, ephemeral records, graffiti, epigraphy from older worlds that give voice to their present and our shared community. A. Calvert, 1947 to 1959. W. J. Billing, 1960 to 1970. B. Wilkes, 1970 to 1972. And now, for a short while, me. There are not as many inscriptions here as those on the lintels of the landing below where the bell ringers meet. Clockwinders' duties are more solitary, and perhaps because of it attract the more introverted, the less gregarious. Clockwinders are more raven than rook. And here each inscription marking the contours of our lives for our own to see. Joseph, August, 1894, 15 Market Street, repaired. A. Smith, 10th of October. Baby girl, 16th of October. W. H. Wade, Kyneton, 1914. F. Heritage, 1917 to 1918, expired February the 9th, 1968. Quiet triumphs, quiet celebrations and remembrance, but no less insignificant for that. Each name carrying on the duties of the one before, each knowing that deliberate, unhurried clunk of the clock mechanism, and the whir of the ratchets tripping over the toothed wheels, and the dusty smell of summer stonework, and the sharp must of masonry rimed in ice, and the burn in the arms and chest, the play of light and wind, the smoothness of the winding handle that feels as if our predecessors have only just put it down. And these ghosted figures form the clouds of witnesses that encompass about me, and I keenly felt their presence. Their appraising eyes at my laboured breathing, my misjudged winding, and the times when the handle slipped or the cogs jammed, and my oily blooded fingers as I struggled to loose them. An autumn and a winter caring for the clock, drenched by summer rain, wading calf-deep the fields through snowy fields. And slowly the voices thawed, and I began to feel more accepted. No longer the soft-handed outsider with clothes stained with city dust. And together we shared a companionable silence. I have no idea which times they chose to do their winding. I have a photograph of Francis Heritage, fresh-faced, powerful, casually leaning against his brand-new bread delivery van, full of the nonchalance of youth. I can imagine him cutting across the main street from his shop, diligently winding in silence. The clicking of ratchets, the slow pull of the weight, the dance of dust in the pale beams of sunshine. He must have loved these times as much as I did. Good old clock, spelt C-L-U-C-K, he wrote on the ladder where I, and perhaps he, hung our dripping coats. F. Heritage wound this clock in the year 1917-18. And I know why he felt the need to write this, why we all felt this need to leave in some way a tangible mark of love and pride for the eyes of only those who would understand to see. 7 sweeps of the hand around the 4 convex faces, north, east, south, west. Behind each wind, 84 hours allotted to the village by the winder's arm and the God that had given it strength. The choir gifts the village with its vocabulary of song. The bell ringers with their peals of coded messages of birth, marriage, death and war, prayer, celebrations, service and grief. And the vicar addresses the cankered heart and the skull beneath the skin. But the gift of the clockwinder, they gave to the village that precious burden that is the awareness of time. In 2015, it was decided that the clock was to be automated, and I was informed that the duties of a clockwinder were no longer needed. On the 19th of May, 2015, the clock of St. Mary's, Tysoe, was wound by hand for the last time. W. H. Wade, Kyneton, 1914. F. Heritage, 1917 to 1918. C. Pilling, February 1918 to 1919. D. R. Army. M. S. Army. H. C. Army. F. H. A. Calvert, 1947 to 1959. W. J. Billing, 1960 to 1970. B. Wilkes, 1970 to 1972. W. R. Billing, Tysoe. John Rycroft, 1973 to 1976. Stan Allen, 1973 to 1981. Danny Packman, PC 122, May 1981 to February 1987. David Burton, March 1987 to March 2012. Richard Good, April 2012 to May 2015. Finis. This is the narrowboat Erica, signing off for the night and wishing you a very restful and peaceful night. Good night. Temperature outside 10.3 degrees. Inside 20 degrees. Humidity 90%. Dew point 8 degrees. Wind direction southwest. Wind strength 9 miles per hour. Barometric pressure 1005.8 falling. Cloud cover 91%. Cloud ceiling 1,600 feet. Precipitation 1.02 millimeters. Moon phase new moon. Day length 15 hours 46 minutes. Sunset 20:57. Sky casting 5:09.